It is time for our peer pressure segment, and my guest is Mike Scheidt. Are you there, Mike?
I am. Hello.
Hello. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good.
Good. Well, thank you for being ready and for appearing on the show. I know that you are not on this coast, so that's always a concern. I've got
a Mondo cup of Stumptown coffee and a love of metal. The two will get me through.
Excellent. And if you could, can you just sort of get the listeners up to speed on what's going on with you? And I know you're going to be getting on a plane tomorrow, and you've got a solo record out. So if you want to sort of highlight that.
Correct. Mm-hmm. I'll be flying out into Asheville tomorrow to play with Nate Hall from U.S. Christmas. He has a record that just came out on Neurot Records, and my own record that just came out and on Thrill Jockey, and we're going to do I think 9 shows total, 9 or 10, and up and down the East Coast, and I'm pretty excited about it and nervous. Playing solo is a whole different trip than playing electric, but I like it a lot, and some of the other people we're going to get to play with, I'm pretty excited about too, and it's going to be fun.
And what had you? Is this your first solo record?
It is, yes.
And how did that? When you go from being in a band that's well known, what's the thought process into putting out a solo record?
I think it's a couple things. I've played acoustic music for a pretty long time, like kind of, semi-seriously. I worked at a very high-end guitar shop in Eugene, Oregon called Mackenzie River Music, and the caliber of guitar we sold in there was, pre-World War Martin guitars, pre-World War II, World War II Gibson, just older, really fancy, exotic, incredible guitars, rarefied guitars, as well as, modern, classics like, Collings and Santa Cruz and Hudson, Dalton and whatnot. So I was just kind of inundated with those kind of older guitars in particular. And then the guys I worked with, the shop owner, Bob November, and Dick Gunn, who's one of my all-time guitar mentors, right alongside Tony Iommi or anybody else. They taught me kind of how to play acoustic, and and they were mostly into swing, like Travis Picken, Merle, Travis, Doc Watson, Chet Atkins, Jerry Reed. That was what they were into, and so I learned a lot from those guys. So I've been playing for years, but never really considered actually doing that. And then I kept seeing, footage from I just love the Woodstock Richie Havens performance. It's something I visit often, and it just blows my mind. And then Yob did a show with Sleep and Scott Kelly, and Scott Kelly was he was doing a solo performance, and I just remember this kind of feeling of just being watching him climb on stage with just an acoustic guitar in front of 1,500 or 1,800 people, and just it scared the hell out of me, and not for him, because he's a bona fide, million-year-old soul who can step up there and make it happen. But just the thought of myself doing it was like, oh my God, how can you do that? He was like a superhero to me at that point. And he played a set, and it was just the whole gamut, like people that were so into it. There's like half the crowd that talked the whole time, and so there's like literally, that's like 800 people talking in a room with an acoustic guitar.
Yeah.
And he was just such a warrior, and just smiled and grinned it through and played his set, and it was stunning. And I think it kind of planted a seed in me, because I walked away from that just with so much respect, and also this feeling that I could never do that, never. But as time went on, I gravitate towards things that kind of freak me out, and it kind of planted the seed in me that just kind of slowly started growing, and then just there came a time where I went through a very rough moment, and I just felt like I needed to express something that Yob wasn't a good vehicle for, and it was a very unadorned kind of, not clever, not no pretense, just painful stuff. And I wrote a record. I went and got an acoustic guitar, and literally 3 weeks later, I had the entire record written.
Wow!
And that's kind of how it happened. And then all of a sudden, I told Scott that I was working on some solo stuff, and a little bit later, he's like, "Hey, why don't you come open for me and Bob Wayne and Jay Moonley?" And that was like, that right there was the beginning.
So how many times have you performed acoustic solo?
Oh, about 10 times, roughly.
Okay. And when you say that that you were scared, I know that you weren't scared by Scott's presence, but was it the the vulnerability, or like?
Well, yeah. I think it's something that I really want from music anyway, and I like to think that I'm good for myself. At least if it has a response in me, then I know it's sincere. But I really I do like music where people are exposed, and whether that be a rock band, whether that be a country band, whatever it is, where there's some kind of depth to it that goes beyond the words, it goes beyond the riffs, and Townes Van Zandt being a crazy awesome example of that. So like, but I think when you're playing solo acoustic music or a solo performance or a quiet performance, whatever it is, I think you have to really mean it, and you can't be just an entertainer or go through the motions. You have to kind of split your chest open, and I think that's what blew me away as much as anything. And it's not that I'm not a sincere performer in Yob, I totally am, but there's so much when you don't have distortion, you don't have volume, you don't have drums, you don't have any of that, and you just have to really, it feels like skydiving without a parachute. You really are jumping into a very intense moment, and you have to do it all the way. And so really just every time I perform, it takes a lot out of me, because I just don't see any way that I can get through it if I don't do that every time.
Well, yeah, there's nothing.
So that's what scared me, is because Scott just stepped right up there and he did it. And I wasn't scared of his presence. I was just kind of like, just scared. It's kind of like when you watch a movie and there's some horrible thing happening and it inspires fear in you, but you're not going through it. It's kind of the same thing. I'm just like watching it, imagining myself there, just going, man, how do you do that? And but I'm finding out.
Awesome. And yeah, I mean, you're there with no, like you said, you're not hiding behind your wall of feedback or anything like that. So it is just you. And
and yeah, you're sharing it with your brothers on stage, or your bandmates. So it's the three of you, or the four of you, or the five of you on stage all together, and there's that kind of support network. And when it's you up there, you gotta dig deep, and especially because the real personal nature of the material that I play, it's even more so that. But the thing is, I mean, it's not a complaint. It just is what it is.
Yeah,
I mean,
sure.
I wouldn't do it any other way. So it's just me growing comfortable in the medium and growing into the medium to begin with.
Right, exactly. Is there any kind of preparation that you go through before a solo show that you wouldn't go through with Yob to go on stage?
Well, no, actually not really. I think just if anything, I just feel a little more anxiety, before I play. But once I get up there, I just kind of, the chips fall, and It's like I have a guitar in my hand and a microphone, and it's like, oh yeah, I do this all the time. It's not any different really. It's
right.
just, and I just really, as far as the ritual goes, I think I just really, in both instances, job or solo, I just make sure that I'm really there, and that I'm really there in that moment and really, really wide awake and wide open and ready to make that connection. That's it.
And yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up, because I've seen Yob a number of times, and it's really obvious that you are connecting. I guess it's saying making the connection is a very good description. Like, what's happening for you in real time, especially in the Yob performances? Because it seems to me from being in the audience that it's almost like the instrument is taking you over, and you're really in a super personal space, although you're in a performance setting.
Yeah, I mean, that's just that's what feels best to me. And I love lots of different kinds of bands and lots of different kinds of performance. Whether it be, full out, corpse paint and spikes and whatever. I mean, I can get way into that and have a great time. Or, bands that are real tough on stage and like, yeah, we're tough. And I can get behind that and get super into it. Or, punk bands that are just letting it all go and just every single bit of angst and anger and frustration, and I can get behind that too. And I grew up with all of that. I've just found that for me, when I climb on stage, I just am very much into the concept of definitely being a performer, not necessarily thinking myself as an entertainer, just rather thinking of it as all these people are here. How do we make this environment a completely shared one? Where it's not dudes on stage and people in the crowd. It's an environment that we're feeding off of each other, and something that's very intentional and awake. Not being afraid to make eye contact, not being afraid to have an interaction that's very sincere, and whoever climbs on board, we can have that interaction, and that's way more interesting to me, for myself. And so, I want the whole room and us to be a single environment, and that's my goal every time. And that, to me, then I just, it's so easy to play in that environment. It's so easy just to be completely free and open, wide up, and have that shared good time. That's basically it. It's just how I feel.
That's great, and it completely comes across. I mean, especially the shared, sort of like the shared environment, absolutely successful 100%.
Well, that's the goal every time.
And thanks for that, though, because really it's like, sometimes you see a show, and you do see a show, and there may not be any connection, and that, may or may not be. I mean, there's certain bands that are known for it and certain bands that aren't, and bands that are known for their shows do very well on a different level.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, so, well, that's...
I mean, Municipal Waste is a really rad example of a band that's, totally fun, but totally connected.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're so connected with what their crowd is doing in each moment, and people have such a good time. I mean, that's a really great example of a band that is totally, I just get blown away by bands that are that good at that, that aren't just putting on this killer show and kind of being like, yeah, we're awesome. It's like, yeah, we're awesome. You guys are awesome. We're all awesome right now. Yeah.
I know. They're in the crowd half the time also.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So and I grew up with that too. I mean, I grew up going to punk shows and being in the crowd and being on the stage and off the stage and on the stage and off the stage, and so it's awesome that there are bands out there that are keeping that spirit alive.
What was the first show that you ever went to?
The first one of major consequence that really kind of was there's two actually that were major game changers for me, and they were both in 84 or 85, probably 85. I think. One was seeing Motorhead and the Cro-Mags, and the Cro-Mags were on the Age of Quarrel tour.
Yep.
And that really blew my mind on a lot of levels. And back then, it was, especially with, Motorhead, they brought a very diverse crowd of, metalheads, punks, skins, bikers, and in that time period, those genres did not cross-pollinate well. They didn't play well with each other.
Yeah.
And so there's tons of friction and fights and just, these weird kind of, almost like the movie Warriors, factions of different looking people that were fighting each other. And I just kind of sat in the way back and just kind of watched the bands, and but it blew my mind. I became like very into going to shows after that, because before then I'd seen a few concerts, but it was like the Fairgrounds band or this and that, and there's nothing, not to diss that, but it wasn't what just blew my mind as a kid. What blew my mind was seeing Motorhead and seeing the Cro-Mags. That blew my mind. And then I saw Metal Church in '85 too.
Wow.
And that destroyed me. It was their first record.
Yeah, David Wayne, yeah.
And then shortly after that, I saw, DOA and just tons of great punk bands. No Means No. First time I saw No Means No, I think, was in '86. That's when just kind of a lot of things turned around for me, and I started getting a lot more involved in the local scene and punk scene, and started playing in punk bands myself, and started playing music all around that time.
Oh yeah, how long have you been playing guitar for?
I think I started when I was 15, so '85.
Okay.
But Yob was the first band I ever played guitar in. I was mostly a bass player for a lot of years, and I wrote on guitar. Like, I was a songwriter, and I wrote on guitar, but I wasn't very good at it. And so I just I just had other guitar players that, that would play in the band, and I would play bass and sing a lot of the time.
Oh, got it. Okay, I was going to ask that. That was going to be my next question. So perfect. And you are we can talk about Yob all day, and you are here as a guest DJ. So I'd like to get into your set of music that you've chosen, and Mike agonized over this. I give the guests 45 minutes of music, and it's never quite enough. That's sort of what I hear.
Right.
So would you like to introduce the first piece and tell me why you chose it?
Oh, no, that's where you need to. I don't think I have the list in front of me of what I gave you. I remember the songs, though.
Well, we can do any order you want, and the first one on the list that you had given me was The Obsessed.
Oh, yeah. Concrete Cancer.
Actually, I have...
no, it's Street Side, yeah. Well, The Obsessed, I think, in like, probably... It might have been '86 or '85. Some friends of mine, we'd all go skateboarding, and we'd spin Metal Massacre cassettes.
Oh yeah.
And so, like, the Metal Massacre 6 was one in particular that we liked a lot, and there's always the song. It's all speed metal, but then The Obsessed would come on, and they would play Concrete Cancer, and that song was like where we'd all we'd slow down and we'd sit down for a minute and we'd just really groove on it. And so that was where I started getting to The Obsessed. But when probably the album that just completely destroyed me was The Church Within. That album is just so special. And Wino's guitar playing, his singing, everyone knows he's great at both, but something about that record really turned me way on. I couldn't believe it. And that song Street Side, and the video, the first time I ever saw the video for that song, it was so weird because you didn't typically see videos from bands that were into doom. They were just too small.
Right.
And so seeing a video and actually being able to see these people perform these songs just was like a real mind blower to me. And so that just, man, what a great song. It's just such a good song.
Okie doke. So my guest is Mike Scheidt of Yob. Am I pronouncing your name correctly, by the way?
Yep, you got it.
Awesome.